the Riddler has actually been manipulating all of the supervillains.
Who is locked, Robert Pattinson Batman, in this murder dungeon based off of a Jigsaw, HH Holmes type figure.
There's a world where the Penguin could be the guy they hire to fix the baseball team, just so you know.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Filup Molina. This is Rogue Theory. Today we're talking about which Batman villain Jonah Hill is apparently going to play. On today's episode, we have, of course, Erik Voss from Rockstars.
Eric!
Comedian Leo Garcia.
Hey!
And frequent New Rockstars contributor Marina Mastros.
Hey,
Welcome back.
Why did you all turn into women with high voices?
That's not what you sound like.
I was
That
trying
is
to
what
mi-
I sound like.
I was trying to mimic your laugh.
Oh,
Your high
it'll
pitch.
happen so many times.
There's also on this episode later, we're going to have some theories about a dangling thread from Avengers Endgame. You thought we found them all, but you can just pull more out, apparently, it turns out.
3 hours.
Sweater.
Okay, so I'm going to establish some rules here. Some roguies are up for grabs.
Yes.
Roguies.
And it's going to be based on the best or most rogue theory.
Best or most rogue?
Well,
Yeah, 'cause
I'll
those
just
things are
change-
different.
If your theories are bad, then we'll switch to rogue.
Got it.
If they're good, then we get reward that. So Jonah Hill is in negotiations to play a villain in the Robert Pattinson version of the Batman. And it's very nasty negotiations, apparently, actually, and they're having a lot of trouble settling down on what character he should play. Apparently, they want him to play someone who is not a flattering body type. And he's like, no, I want to be
An
this ripped
alternative
dude.
body type.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In his opinion, it's not flattering. So
Right.
what we're going to do is we're going to come up with our best or most rogue theories. Did I tickle you?
Yeah.
That's not even a laugh.
That's not even a laugh. That's just a high-pitched noise.
The distinction between like you can either be good or just be rogue is like saving me right now.
In life, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
You
in
can be
life.
good or you can be the rogue
Yeah.
villain. So speaking of those rogue villains, I want to hear your pitch on here's the villain he should play in this exact story.
Okay, so my pitch for who should play is the Riddler. Okay, which
The Riddler, okay.
is the Riddler, yeah, but specifically in the Hush comic book, like
Ooh. Pause. Spoiler warning.
Okay,
for
yeah.
Hush.
You're right.
Because I know that story and you're about to say some fascinating stuff. If you want to read Hush, hit pause, go buy Hush, read it real quick, and
Yeah.
then come back.
just real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Then come back to this exact place where you pause this podcast or this YouTube video. And so he's the one from the Hush comic timeline. So he's a super genius, right? And he manipulates basically all of the other supervillains to like. I don't want to say F.
Fudge.
To fudge.
Yeah.
To mess with Batman at the same time, but also they're not doing it in the ways that they typically would. So like Batman, as he's like fighting all these people on an individual basis, he's like, wait, like this is Poison Ivy, but it doesn't seem like something she'd typically do. And after a series of encountering a bunch of obstacles like that, he also falls and cracks his head open and has to get brain surgery. That may or may not be a part of it. But after all of this, he discovers that the Riddler has actually been manipulating all of the supervillains. And at the beginning, the Riddler is kind of like the Rudolph of, like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed
Like
Reindeer.
they won't play with him.
Like they don't respect him. He's like kind of a lesser villain. Like he's
Huge
the
zero.
Rudolph.
Yeah.
He just is like, there. And then at the end, it's like a dark timeline of Rudolph, the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And at the end, he basically shows like, hey, mother fudgers. I like managed to manipulate all of you and control all of you. And he finds out the identity of Batman, but doesn't reveal it because a riddle that everybody has the answer to wouldn't be good. So
Right.
he's going to
Yeah.
keep that secret
Yeah.
forever. And it's a great role for Jonah Hill because it's a huge role, right? Like it's essentially the entire film is around him, about him. He causes the entire plot line. It's from start to finish. It's like basically about him.
Though in Hush, right? That's kind of like a big secret, right?
Yes, until
there's
the very end.
not misleading direction it goes in, but
Misdirects,
there's a whole mystery about this whole other character.
Yeah.
There are rumors that there will be more villains in it. They haven't actually said that it's going to be his normal rogues gallery.
But that there will be some element of a rogues.
Yeah, and but Hush is like, I mean, Superman's even in Hush as a villain.
Yeah, he is.
So it could be all of those. This is
Well,
interesting.
there's options. It's good because there's lots of options.
I love the idea just of a story where Rudolph uses the other reindeer to kill Santa.
That's basically my pitch.
Yeah.
But then he knows the
Secretly
true
the whole
identity
time.
of Santa, which is
Wilford
Wilford Brimley.
Wilford Brimley.
Yeah.
There's an elf out there that's been killing people,
Yeah.
but that's just a misdirect.
Yeah.
It's really Rudolph who's controlling the elf.
Yeah.
And
He has
doesn't
his elf
Riddler
family.
show up early in Hush? And then
So he
Batman's just like,
does.
oh, that's all Riddler's going to do.
Because he dismisses him.
I think he's like robbing a bank or something,
Right.
and it's not. I think it's like Nightwing or something. It's just like get out of here, and like slaps him around. Or
And that's how
something.
Batman figures out. He's like, wait, that crime was beneath Riddler. He'd want to work in some riddles to this. And that's
Right.
like later he's like, that's how I figured out it was you.
You
must
mu-
have
yeah,
been
much
behind
later.
it.
He used limericks instead of
Yeah.
All right, cool, Riddler.
This is worth exactly one Rogie.
One roguie.
Yeah, one Rogie.
Take that to the bank.
I'm into it. He plays the Riddler, but I like this exact version of the Riddler that we were kind of just touching on there, where he's not impressive.
Right.
You can beat him up easily. He has to squeeze into that Jim Carrey outfit, the exact one or
He's gotta
whatever.
do
Just really embarrass him, and then turn out, well, I am the smartest person here, not counting Bruce Wayne. So he manipulated the whole cast. I love that part. It also feels appropriate for Jonah Hill's trying to, always show off. Like, no, I'm not just that kid from 40-Year-Old Virgin,
Yeah,
right? Like ever
I'm a
since
real
then,
actor.
exactly, he's been trying to prove that. So it would give him a lot of ability to like.
And he gets to wear a
Be
cool outfit at the end. Not at the beginning, but at the end.
Well, especially in this like new DC universe, like where Joker is gonna probably win another Oscar. Like he could take Riddler, who is typically seen as something silly, and like say,
I think in his head he's
I'm gonna
like-
make this an Oscar
Gunning for it.
winning
Yeah.
performance.
Oh man, I don't want that. Like if he like really is like pushing it, where he's like has a lot of chewing up the scene kind of moments, like crying and laughing into a mirror and whatnot. Ugh.
He's like, what is the answer?
Yeah, oh, God. No,
To his own riddles.
Yeah.
a question mark on his face and like in a little boy's mouth or whatever. That sounds really weird, but I'm referencing the trailer of Joker.
Look at Eric's face. Look at Eric's face.
Eric's remembering what his own story. Cool. All right, one
Yay.
roguie assigned to Marina. Let's hear the next rogue theory, Leo.
Okay, so I have sort of two theories.
Okay, pick one.
Okay,
is,
then
I'm
it's not
gonna
fair.
say both, just because I'm fighting you in every turn.
We can cut anything you say.
Pick one. I'm gonna do both.
My first super rogue theory is just the fact that this new Joker is sort of a combination of Taxi Driver, King of Comedy, and the idea that they're trying to earn cred, DC is, by sort of parodying or like amping or like taking from these old classics.
Yeah, like recreating these classic
And
films.
so essentially the idea being that two roguies.
No.
I didn't even do anything.
I'm not even taking
not even
No,
halfway through.
so far I'm kind of into this idea of if they're taking these classics
gonna
that
put this in your
greats
hand now.
that a lot of people haven't seen yet,
Yeah.
and giving them a new life.
So
Yeah.
this is just Jonah Hill in this version. He'd be cast as his character from the movie Moneyball.
Data analyst for a baseball
Where
team.
are the roguies going?
He put it back.
Where are the rogues going? And
great.
he's hired by
Please
by
stop.
Bruce Wayne, who owns the Gotham Guardians.
Please stop.
He owns the Gotham Guardians, and he's got to somehow turn that team around. And he's using
has to use analytics.
he's using sabermetrics
Based off RBIs instead of home runs.
No, he's using war. He's using war. He's using
Marina, if he keeps
whip.
going, I'm taking your rogue. Marina, make him stop.
All right. Well, here's my other one.
Pow.
Pow.
Bang. I think there's an option where Jonah Hill will have to play the character he probably is fighting against playing due to all his body transformation. He's sort of stuck between body types, and he would.
There are only two
What a
you
compliment.
can choose between.
Hey, you've mostly left one body
Yeah.
type.
And he'd probably end up playing the Penguin. I think, and obviously the Penguin doesn't have to be
Yeah, he
whatever
can be
version
any
he is from the comic.
interpretation.
Yeah, he can be any size, although he's typically
Don't
bigger.
limit the penguin's body expression, guys.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now that said, penguins
Yes,
have a
are-
pretty certain
True.
they have a
They're
height,
sort of pear shaped. They're
or,
short,
or even
pear-shaped.
penguin shaped.
A penguin is the perfect shape for a
One
penguin.
might
Exactly.
say.
Yeah, they're penguin shaped, and
So he's probably not gonna be ripped.
but ostensibly he would play. The way that I'm factoring in is if this is gonna be like a noir serial killer story, is that like perhaps a young Penguin is sort of rising the ranks of Gotham's crime world, and in some ways is maybe through his own sort of, more dastardly ways, trying to kill this serial killer as well. And him and Batman are both trying to catch this killer, just by different means. I think there would be a world where he thinks he's doing right, but in doing so is sort of going against what Batman believes in.
Okay, but like what? What's he doing?
He's trying to suss out who the serial killer or whoever this is on the loose.
Just like by beating people up. Or
by getting his goons to find this guy, and maybe he's errantly killing people who he thinks are and so he's sort of misfiring, and the bloodshed becomes too much. So Batman has to kind of put both him and whatever serial killer in check by the end of it.
Okay, all right. I'm kind of feeling it. It feels like a low action version of the movie. But
I don't think this movie's going to be high action.
Well, I think they will probably have some fight scenes, but I do like the idea of it being pretty noir. You can't even get a full Rogie because you made us walk through the earlier thing.
I wanted to tell me more about this.
Moneyball.
Moneyball.
I'll tell you more about this Moneyball.
No one will get us a Rogie for the rest of the show if we hear any more about Moneyball villain, unless he's a character named Moneyball, and now it starts to become funny again.
He's a ball of money.
Yeah. But he's a super genius.
And he rolls around.
Yeah,
they're
he
always
just
super
rolls.
geniuses.
A ball of money, just like a snowball of collected dollar bills, and eventually it rolls out, and then everyone gets paid.
There's a world where the Penguin could be the guy they hire to fix the baseball team. Just so you know,
it's very clear that we've decided we're not looking for best theory anymore. We're looking for most rogue theory.
Great!
Then I'm winning, right?
The game has changed.
Mine was real.
Okay, here's my theory. So I think if we are thinking, Jonah Hill wants to take this because he wants to win an Oscar. We have to assume everyone wants to be Batman villains.
He has one, no?
He's been nominated for Moneyball.
Yeah.
He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor
which
and Wolf of Wall
is
Street.
insane to me.
Makes no sense.
Yep.
But he wants to win an Oscar. What's another strategy to win an Oscar? You play someone who is a historical figure. You do a biopic.
Yeah.
So if we look at a lot of the Batman villains as people taken from real world figures, Batman was famously based off of Teddy Roosevelt, right? A self-made, wealthy man who learned jujitsu and not jujitsu, but other martial arts.
Wait, hold on.
Is this real?
Dive into this.
Is this
what
real?
do you mean Batman is famously based on Teddy Roosevelt?
I learned this from you, my friend. It was
When did I say
the whole
this? I
idea
lied
of
to
the
you.
Was he asleep?
Batman story, like one of the influences. I'm not saying the predominant influence was Teddy Roosevelt, but Teddy Roosevelt was a wealthy kid who was born with these afflictions and had to basically reinvent himself to be a crime fighter. And he was a police commissioner of New York City and busted up a lot of these crime lords and basically won back the city of New York.
Wow.
And that was what he built his political fortunes on and rose to the presidency. He was shot during a speech and fought through it and finished his speech. He was a major badass.
And he would dress up as
not that element. They're basically the social element, the history element. So if we look at Batman's story that way,
It's also amazing that you forgot you said it.
I've said a lot of things.
from the Victorian era of United States history, if Teddy Roosevelt was the greatest hero, who is the greatest villain serial killer of that era? HH Holmes, the greatest American serial killer.
I just watched a documentary about that.
Devil in the White City, Chicago
Not the
World's
first time
Fair,
that we've
turn of
come
the
up with
century.
that.
They had the World's Fair at Chicago, and he used this.
Yes.
A lot of people were flocking to this city.
Yep.
He built basically a murder castle, a hotel that he
Yep.
would have people stay in, that he would
secret
rig
rooms.
up with booby traps to drop people into rooms where they would be suffocated or gassed. He would chop people up. He would cadavers would go missing.
He
This guy's a
locked
monster.
2 children in a suitcase. and
Yes.
suffocated them.
And a lot of
Snuck
young
him into this somewhere fun.
Yeah.
no.
Well, snuck him into his murder room.
You're right. Then he took them to the movies and let them out and got
They
them
got to
popcorn.
see a PG-13 movie.
Yes.
Very
correct.
fun for him. Now, the character of H.H. Holmes, he's a real person.
Yeah.
The character of Jigsaw, some say, was partially based on H.H. Holmes as a serial killer who locks people into these dungeons and they have to try to work their way out and he messes with their heads. So, how does this work in the world of Batman? Well, we've talked about this idea of Arkham Asylum being turned into this kind of like death trap maze that Batman gets locked in, as has been the case in the Arkham Asylum games. What if Jonah Hill is playing Hugo Strange, this psychiatrist who works at Arkham Asylum. But now in this world, it's this abandoned place that has had villains who have broken out of it, and now they live there because they prefer to live there. It's his world. He is doing human experimentation, including, we've talked about Andy Serkis being a villain. Maybe Andy Serkis is Clayface in this, and he's like, just kill me. And he's playing a character
If you
like
want to
that.
see the worst thumbnail we've ever made, look up our Andy Serkis as Clayface thumbnail.
The third episode of this show.
Yeah.
So that's a character that Jonah Hill's playing. He's playing a chin strap beard psychologist who is locked Robert Pattinson Batman in this murder dungeon based off of a Jigsaw HH Holmes type figure, and is breaking down his psychosis to force him to encounter other like genetically experimented and patchwork Frankenstein other Batman villains to destroy him, and he has to fight each past villain with ultimately Jonah Hill is Hugo
but
Strange
it's like
behind it.
Arkham at that point, right?
Yes.
He's like working his way through Arkham.
It also kind of sounds like a little bit like Silent Hill in terms of like here's
Yeah.
this abandoned asylum that these characters aren't quite who they are.
I really like
That
that
was really
theory.
good.
I'll take it.
I was actually going to give you
Wow.
more Rogies.
How did I lose points?
But
Yeah.
because you were starting to head toward a thing where you were like, it was going to be H.H. Holmes like for real or
Yeah,
something.
I
Really,
thought
H.H.
it was like 1890s Batman.
Yeah, or
which I would
something,
be
something
like
crazy like
let's
That'd
that.
be super cool.
We could do that. Yeah. What is it? Isn't
Yeah,
there
I
a
changed
Jack
my
the
thing,
Ripper
yeah.
Batman story? The
Yeah, exactly.
Gotham by Gaslight.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, Robert Pattinson in The Lighthouse, you wouldn't have to do much work for him to look like 1890s Batman.
See, that excites me a lot, so I'll give myself a Rogie
Whoa!
for bringing that up.
Philip's the player in the game. He
playing
changes
the whole
everything.
time.
Oh my god.
Wow.
I just get to redistribute it later.
Oh,
I
okay.
get to
Okay.
keep it.
Cool.
I think you can self-empower.
Well, I get paid in money. You guys get paid in Rogies. I also really like the idea of working through Arkham. You kind of had like a scattershot approach where it's like
Yes.
you'll like something in here.
Big net.
Yeah. Okay, so
Rogues Gallery,
Yeah.
surgery, experimentation,
how do
Popular
we get
video
Marvel
games.
in here?
Devil in the White, like
Jigsaw.
bestsellers,
Yeah.
Devil in the White City. What do you like? We got it all. And Erik
you,
Voss's
babe.
Rogue
Thank you.
If you like
Theories.
true crime podcasts and playing the Arkham games, there's something for you in my
Is
pitch.
this your Tinder profile?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go down the line, and before I actually have you guys re-summarize your point, I want to focus on this Jonah Hill angle for a second.
Okay.
I see the chin strap. You beautifully,
Yeah.
like even
Painted
podcast
it.
listeners could only see chin straps. But now I want to know, just give me this portrayal of in your story what Jonah Hill is going to be. So you know how kind of like the characters get reinvented a lot in these modern versions of these films. What is Jonah Hill's interpretation of, for instance, the Riddler?
Well, I think they might do a younger, like literally like a flashback of him like as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like this scrawny little kid. But then because Jonah Hill wants to do this, he gets to get super buff. So he gets to not be the Penguin. He gets to be like super buff, and like he lives out his childhood fantasy of like, I'm attractive, I'm fit, and I'm a super genius. All you kids who bullied me is like when we were kids are wrong, and none of you signed my high school yearbook. But now it's full of signatures, mother fudgers.
His own
Mother fudgers.
What's his real world profession that is like the equivalent? You know what I mean? They always like give him like is he a game show host or
he's a
something?
librarian because he's associated with knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
He's a what?
A
librarian.
You know how they
Oh.
always tell you riddles when you come in?
Yeah,
Well, like
classically.
he's he's the keeper of not like he knows everything. He knows the answers to everything.
Interesting.
nice.
Okay, cool. All right. That sounds like a real like buff nerdy role,
Yeah.
which I feel very close to.
And thoughtful.
Mine also, he starts out as a kid who gets bullied.
Okay,
a lot.
most people do.
He starts out as a baby into a kid
Yeah.
who gets bullied by the other kids. Very
Yeah, this
similar.
sounds like mine.
Sounds a lot like yours, except it's because of his size, unfortunately.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
yeah.
so he's a big guy.
He's a bigger kid, but then he does try to.
And
sort of-
remind us, this is Penguin.
This is
not-
Penguin. This is Penguin,
You're
not
right,
Riddler.
You're right. Okay, yeah.
And so I think it's also, I mean, Robert Pattinson and Jonah Hill are pretty similar in age. They're both like mid 30s. So like the idea would be that like he's a young crossplay. He's a young version of the Penguin. I would say like I think like a young Carmen Falcone. Like he's just
Sure.
like he's just like he's starting to put it together. He's wearing these like bigger suits, but like they still don't. He doesn't feel like he's stepped into them.
yeah.
So it's kind of like the mob boss's son kind of look.
Yeah, there's a
to
little
him
bit
at
of that,
least.
even though like that's not what his family is into, but he has the money to sort of do
So
that.
maybe he's a classmate of Bruce Wayne's when they're growing up, and they're both very rich. But Bruce Wayne, his father is a famous doctor. This kid's father is a mob boss.
Yeah, well, Bruce Wayne also, I think, usually in stories is like very athletic, even as a child. Like the idea like he would be the bully potentially to Penguin.
Yeah, or even if he's just the one that's getting all the accolades or whatever, that's enough for some people to hate someone.
And then finally he gets his, I think his occupation is he's a general manager of a baseball team.
We got there.
Marina, I'm sorry, you're losing your Rogie. You didn't protect us. You did not protect us. It was your job
That's
to
fair.
protect
I forgot.
I still, man, I don't even want to go back to you right now, but
Very
I still
funny.
will go back to you because I want to know why is he the Penguin? What like detail about this dude is that they're like, but the only name that makes sense is the Penguin. Does he eat a lot of fish? What's up?
I think it's very clear.
Yeah,
what's your
mob boss, bullied, Penguin.
Well, he actually does use a monocle.
Okay.
To like comb over baseball statistics.
His fin is catcher's mitt shaped.
Yeah,
It's got
he
a
looks
groove
like,
for a
the
baseball.
Marlin. He looks like Billy the Marlin.
Yeah.
Looks
Billy
like-
is
Billy-
Marlin.
He used to be the mascot.
Nothing is explaining why he's the Penguin. Penguins don't actually wear monocles. All right, it's not like, oh, he's wearing a
Wait,
monocle,
what?
so we'll call
Hold
him the
on.
Penguin.
What?
Also, if he looks like a Marlin, why is he not the Marlin? There's no reason for this person to be the Penguin.
Okay, he's the Penguin because, as I said, the suits maybe are ill-fitting, and also he's been trying to like lose this weight, so he's wearing bigger pants.
Oh, that's
he's wearing
cute.
bigger
Yeah.
pants that are
That's
cinched
cute.
too
Okay.
tight,
That's
Right.
cute.
and so
I'm down with that because penguins look like they're wearing tuxedos that
Little
don't fit.
suits.
Yeah.
They're like very tight tuxedos.
and so he's wearing like hammer pants, like MC Hammer pants.
That's cute.
Let's switch before you lose. That
was very
you had
rogue.
it for-
Yeah.
Very
he
rogue.
loses, I lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I lose, you lose.
Yeah.
It's a sinking ship here.
Yeah,
Sinking tide.
Yeah, sinking tide lowers all ships.
Tides don't sink; they just lower.
Love to be the low tide.
Yeah. All right, Eric, and then your Jonah Hill. We know chin strap.
Chin strap.
Hugo Strange.
Yeah.
But what else?
He did not start as a child. Just existed always as a man. No, he's
Sort of apparates out of nowhere.
yeah.
Sure.
As an adult.
Cillian Murphy from the Dark Knight movie started as like a psychologist. Honestly, Harley Quinn started as a psychologist. They all start as psychologists. And then just they're on a narrow path and they tip the other way. No, he is working as, I kind of like thinking of him as the owner of he's not the owner, he's just the warden of the prison in Silence of the Lambs, who just likes torturing his inmates.
Yeah.
That's how Jonah Hill starts in this world. He wants to experiment to try to improve their state, their mental state, and to fix them. But when they don't fix the way he wants them to fix, he has to force them to become the monstrosities that he imagines them to be. So that plus a chin strap is the complete role of Hugo Strange.
Because he has a lab coat and
And a monocle.
And this thing in a monocle,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this like Joseph Mengele version of.
Yeah, it's like experimenter on people that are, and then
Yes.
But also,
well,
it's kind of like Dexter. He's experimenting on the worst people, so you're kind of okay with
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, what we're not calling out is that he might be creating the villains, right? By
Yes.
experimenting on them, and now, hey, what if I mix you with crocodile DNA?
Yeah, I want to see a clinical approach.
love to
The way
squash
that like Dr.
Yeah.
Frankenstein is someone who believes that he can make the superior man by just like stitching together parts of criminals that he digs up. But these are living criminals that he's taking parts of their bodies and stitching together, and maybe using other kind of experiments to breed a new race of things to torture Batman with.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's great.
All right,
Wow.
breeding a new race. I love it.
That's great.
Marina,
Won't get DC in any trouble.
Surgically creating, not breeding. Oh,
you
boy.
said breed.
did.
Okay, so let's hear your overall theory again in a tweet.
In a tweet, super smart. Jonah Hill is super smart. Riddler, # Rudolph revenge.
Not, but without clarifying why Rudolph is in there
Absolutely
in the
not.
tweet. Okay.
Is it
No.
Rudolph Hess? It's Hess.
Oswald Cobblepot named GM of Gotham Guardians. # Go Gotham.
No.
He just said no.
Jonah Hill plays Hugo Strange, a sadistic HH Holmes-esque owner of a
This is a long tweet. You're running out of
Gotham
characters.
Guardians of
It's a
Arkham
thread,
Asylum.
It's a thread. 1 out of
Yeah.
2.
Of Arkham Asylum as a murder castle.
Hashtag.
Hashtag go Guardians.
Go Guardians.
All right, I'm most into Eric's.
Woo!
So Eric,
Come
wait,
back,
I like to
kid.
do 3, 2, 1 on this. So we'll do 3.
Yeah.
And then Marina, I like yours actually. 2.
Yay.
And then Leo.
Yeah.
Marina gets another 1.
That's fair because I've gone down with this ship
Yeah,
for
exactly.
long enough.
But we've risen with this tide.
Yeah. Look at this.
Yeah.
There are ways for you to come back. Here's why you care. Your wish comes true.
yeah, that's true.
And you
There's a
forgot
wish.
that you guys submitted wishes before the show, and whoever wins the show gets their wish to come
Yeah,
true.
that's right.
And Leo,
I
yours
was
is
just-
medical, and you really need this. so we'll see.
His is a make-a-wish.
Oh
Yeah.
no, guys! I want to. We'll get to the wishes later, but we have another theory that we want to go into. All right, so there was a fan on Reddit. What is it? WhipG or something, right? WhipG was pointing out this issue in the current timeline of the MCU based on the events of Avengers Endgame. So remembering that 2014 Thanos comes to our modern time and is the one that they fight at the end, and Captain Marvel destroys his ship, the Sanctuary 2 and whatnot. But the other Thanos, who gets his head chopped off earlier, also has this amazing ship, the Sanctuary 2. That was not destroyed. That's out there. There's also just in general Thanos tech out there and stuff, which we've learned a lot about, and that is some of the most advanced stuff. We saw his sword tear apart Captain America's shield, right?
Yeah.
So these things are all out there. So I want to know, what are the theoretical implications of Thanos' ship still being out there, Sanctuary 2, and which is like the probably most capable ship we've ever been introduced to in the MCU, and just in general his tech, like his sword. How could that affect the future of the MCU since they're still around?
Sure. I mean, okay, so the Sanctuary 2 is like the MCU equivalent of what, a Star Destroyer or the Death Star, maybe? It doesn't destroy
like
an entire
the
planet,
Secretary,
but yeah, it's a massive battleship that raining fire could wipe out like the universe's 2 most powerful armies if left unchecked. So that's floating out there because, yeah, we're talking about like Farmer Thanos, right? Like weird grapefruit picking cooking show Thanos who got killed.
American Gothic Thanos.
Yeah. So that ship's still out there somewhere. We know from the battle, there was the battle at the end of Infinity War in Wakanda that most of the Black Order had died. So a lot of his Outrider army's gone. It's been culled in half. But yeah, the ship's still out there. At the end of Far From Home, we saw Nick Fury on a mysterious Skrull ship. Right, and we've done some explanations of this, that this could be the Peak, the Sword, which is the new offshoot group of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics.
Right. Explain that a little bit more clearly.
So, yeah, in the comics, you have S.H.I.E.L.D., which is like the strategic homeland, it's like...
They wanted it to spell S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, they got to it. Later in the comics, Fury leaves S.H.I.E.L.D. and he ends up being involved with SWORD, which is also an acronym. But SWORD, as opposed to S.H.I.E.L.D., S.H.I.E.L.D. protects Earth. SWORD is kind of like interplanetary defense. They keep an eye out in the cosmos and they see things that are coming, but they're kind of orbiting the planet Earth on this base called the Peak. It's like a space station. And so we're wondering that maybe that Skrull ship that he's on at the end of Far From Home is the MCU version of the Peak, and that now Skrulls are working with him to try to still find their new home world. But specifically after all the events with Thanos, he's like, okay, we need to keep an eye on the sky as opposed to keeping our ear to the ground, eye of the sky. And that is now what his operation is. That's his next move. What if that ship is Thanos' ship that's left
Sanctuary
behind?
2?
So the Sanctuary 2.
Wow.
And they're like, let's get some Skrulls on this because we trust them. They're our allies. We like them a lot more than we like the Kree.
Right.
And through the events that we'll see in the next Captain Marvel film, we'll see the history of the Skrulls with Earthlings, people like Nick Fury, and they're going to have a joint strategic initiative that they work on together using this ship as their home base.
Well,
Cool.
which totally works because if you think of the way S.H.I.E.L.D. approaches things, they have ideas like helicarriers, right?
Yeah,
Where it's
yeah.
like these flying bases.
We want to stay
basically.
mobile, a mobile command
right?
center.
But
Yeah, they
one
love
that can
flying
destroy.
bases.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They love it.
Yeah, all right. And then what can they do now that they couldn't do otherwise?
They
Because
can
have it?
clean up. They can destroy all their enemies. I mean, I think it's going to be useful, especially like there was that other line in Far From Home where the Skrull versions of Fury and Hill were talking about Kree sleeper cells. So maybe there's there is a war going on. The Kree Skrull war is still going on, but now it's a covert Cold War, and they're using this ship as a mobile command center to better defend themselves against Kree attacks. Like the Kree still have an entire army and navy, and they're gonna need like some kind of way to fight the Kree whenever they come to Earth.
And maybe is just I know you're not planned for this, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. Maybe is there something on that ship?
A star map.
A star map.
The effort for the effort.
Navigation wins wars.
The star map. That's how they found Luke Skywalker at the end of Force Awakens. Star maps can be a big deal.
Hey,
Yeah,
the
that's right.
Spanish Armada conquered the world by having a great navigation and superior to other world powers.
Yeah,
we talk-
legitimately, if they
Yeah.
have a map to places that they'd never even known existed. Yeah.
Can we talk about the fact that, like, although this is an amazing ship, like, it's been around for a while. Like, you would think, just like anything else, the newest version of something is the best. Shouldn't there be a Sanctuary 9
3.
that's, like, really good?
Yeah, it's got 3 cameras, sort of.
It's got 3 cameras.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same.
Yeah. Just more expensive.
I think it's more the stuff inside the ship that is probably important.
Star
Okay.
maps.
The star maps.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I have
All right,
thoughts.
Leo,
of-
go for
just
it.
a
All right,
globe.
I'll go into it. So I think I'm not even sure if this is on the ship or on the planet where he was a farmer. But I think we saw that 2014 Thanos' double-bladed sword. I don't even know how you refer to that weapon.
A fork.
A fork. Yes, a bent fork.
Bad fork.
Worst fork. We saw that his worst fork is super strong, can cut into vibranium,
Yeah.
which is pretty, like, was supposed to be the strongest metal on
That we know.
that we know of.
Yeah.
So the idea that, like, he had this weapon that is existing somewhere in the universe. Either the Avengers who went to Thanos' home planet were like, "Oh, that's nifty. We should grab that. Maybe we'll use," as if they didn't use it, but like, let's take that and we'll do experiments on it and see what it is.
Yeah.
Or it's on Sanctuary 2, wherever Thanos parked it, pre-farming. And I think, like, that's something that could potentially be brought into. Does someone experiment with it and create adamantium? I mean, that's a synthetic,
Yeah.
metal
Remind
alloy.
us what adamantium is used for.
It's Wolverine's bones.
it coats the
Wolverine's
bones of Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, it's a bone coater.
Bone
Could have
coat.
used that.
Yeah.
Don't say that too fast.
Bone coater?
Bone. Okay, so no, you could say it fast.
Okay.
Aren't human body flesh just a bone coat?
Yeah. I always think it's weird around Halloween how we just have skeletons everywhere. It's like our insides.
We're just sentient
outside.
bone coats.
Okay, I like how we focused on bone coat and not the introduction of adamantium to the MCU.
Okay, so the main way that most people are familiar with adamantium is that whoever what's his face? Stryker is essentially using Wolverine's natural healing powers to essentially insert this alloy into his skeleton and make him an indestructible killing machine. And then other people get parts of it as it is thrown about the Marvel universe. But essentially, it'd become the next strongest thing. Which,
You know what'd be interesting is if it's literally the worst fork, they can smelt it or whatever and then use it kind of like once or twice.
Yeah.
So that's enough to cover like a short guy's bones.
yeah.
And then maybe like one other character's nails.
Well, I think it would also make sense. 'Cause I think in most of the comics, it's a synthetic material that's sort of made. So the idea that, like, they took it and sort of combined it, maybe with vibranium, maybe with just normal things that exist, aluminium.
Don't. You can't suddenly have an accent.
And then they use it for just a limited amount of things. Me and off-screen producer were also talking about the fact that potentially maybe they could make unobtainium from it. And then the
Whoa.
Avatar
crossover.
Avatar universes, the Marvel universes, and then we just need like a lightsaber to fall into one of
Yeah,
those,
yeah.
and then it's like we can combine them all into a
I used to
movie.
think that as a kid that lightsabers should fall through their own handles and then fall through the earth and then just like come out the other side and then swing back. So when you say falling lightsaber,
Like Portal.
it brings me back to that. And for that nostalgia, thank you. You get one Rogie. be good to it.
Yeah,
is
how does it feel?
amazing.
You're back in.
yeah.
You're
Welcome
back
to the
in.
club.
The
And
tide is rising.
And a full one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And I'll
not a
also
baby
say
one.
his makes like is interesting. Adamantium in the MCU.
Yeah.
But I won't give you another Rogie. for
You
that.
don't have to. I don't deserve it.
Certainly not.
I know who I am.
Marina.
great. Okay.
Save us.
Ooh, pressure. Okay, so mine is just a pitch for like the plot of the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So the
Is it completely unrelated to my question?
whatever you guys are
what
talking
if you
about, I
asked
don't know.
this
Yeah, yeah.
instead?
I'm gonna answer my own question.
That is just like Leo.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
The voice.
So there's this baseball team, right?
Yes. Did you say Spaceball? Because that'd be amazing. It's a Spaceball team.
That's
and
how we
Peter
get-
Quill becomes the GM, and he has to use sabermetrics to get.
Yep. So the spaceship is where Thanos parked it, right? And who's the person who knows where he parked it, where the keys are, how to drive it, where her old room is Gamora, right? So she goes back home. I mean, right? Like she's like, this is basically mine. I grew up here. All my old posters are in my bedroom wall. All my she like knows where the
I love
key
that
is hidden.
Sanctuary 2 is a mobile home that has been left to a girl after her dad gets dusted.
She grew up there. She knows how to she knows everything about it. She knows how to drive it. She knows how to work everything. She probably was responsible for keeping it clean as a kid. And so she goes
This is getting
back.
very specific to Marina's youth.
It's basically like she wants her dad's like Mustang that she always wanted to have, but he never let her have it. And finally she's like, well, he's gone. I'm going to drive this freaking Mustang. So she takes the keys, puts the keys in, and she's like, just pooping around the galaxy. And
What?
she's doing whatever she wants. It's her car now.
She said pooping around the galaxy.
She's pooping around the galaxy and doing whatever.
So
Hero
committing
stuff.
genocide? What is that? That could be
No,
anything.
doing
Like-
the plot of the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Yeah. And Philip, any ship that's traveling in close orbit to a planet,
has to dump
it's
waste.
gonna drop waste
Yeah.
and murder someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what shooting stars are. They're beautiful. Yeah. Space poop.
You wish
Yeah,
upon a
space
poop.
So the Guardians of the Galaxy are like, yeah, let's use this spaceship. This is way better. That was the sound effect of poop. The spaceship
But they
movie.
have to. Gamora's not on their side yet.
Ugh, whatever. Just
No, so give me plot. How did they get her on
okay,
their side?
so she gets her car back. Stop poking holes in my movie.
No,
that
make it
doesn't
happen.
need to make sense.
This is
I want
almost,
to make
this
sense.
is almost not
No.
rogue at all. This is like
No, I'm
this
saying
could
this,
be the plot of
this
Guardians.
is exactly what will probably happen, which is why I want you to guess it.
Okay. So she gets her car back. She's going around because they're not together yet, right? So she
disappears.
She disappears. She's on her own. She gets her car back. She's like, F y'all. And basically, the plot of this movie is that it is Guardians of the Galaxy. They have to get back together. But along the way, in space, like the whole movie takes place in space. And in space, you can meet all the other characters that they're trying to involve anyway. Like Silver Surfer, right? Basically anybody who occupies space.
Adam Warlock.
Yeah, Adam Warlock would be a big
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can meet during the plot of this movie. And anyway, the plot...
I like an airport terminal, kind
yes,
of basically.
Yeah. It's Deep Space Nine!
You were
Way to
Star
connect
Trek
it back to
into
Star
this.
Trek.
Yeah, that's where my true knowledge lies.
That's interesting. Maybe all these other like cosmic entities see Thanos' old ship. They're like,
Right.
oh, that
Right.
son of a bitch. I
She
got a
can
score to
basically
settle.
roll
And they knock
any-
on the door.
yeah.
She's like, he's dead.
Also,
Maybe she
she's
remember
like,
how- yeah.
hold on 1 second. I'm Thanos. I'm coming to the door.
Go grab the mask.
Just pie on the face. Mrs. Doubtfire every time. Every single time.
It was all run by a fruity.
Every time. Okay.
The whole time.
The whole time.
So she does that. I'll also say we could have just said Peter Quill's looking for her.
Yes.
Right, and he just finds her because he finds the ship.
Yeah.
Great.
Right, well, or...
I do
well,
like
yeah.
Eric's sort of melding of that, where he's just like, people hate. There's so many
You're
people
right,
that
you
hate
guys are right.
Thanos.
Yeah,
They're
you guys are
gonna.
right, you guys are right.
She needs a safe place, so she goes Sanctuary 2, but
Right.
it's almost instantly put in
Yes.
peril.
It's not a sanctuary. It's
It's
Right.
the opposite of a
Right.
sanctuary.
And
so
maybe Peter Quill, like,
has to then go-
earns her trust all over again.
teams up with Warlock.
Teams up
not.
with new
And
characters.
something
Yeah,
that the MCU definitely does is the sins of the father, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right,
they
yeah.
end up we talked about last week how Iron Man created every villain.
Yeah, really.
before that.
Ostensibly, yeah.
Yeah, and so it is kind of like, things that Thanos did, if Gamora is still technically known as being on his side, you know,
Right.
maybe people are coming for payback.
Totally.
I like that. And
Yay.
Leo with the assist, you're going to get another Rogie.
wow!
I'm in sniffing distance.
Yeah, but real quick, I just sum them up from again in a tweet.
What did I pitch?
Every time you lose a Rogie for not knowing your own theory.
Oh wait, yes.
It's
Now
a
I'm
pretty
in the lead.
jacked Rogie though.
Until that one's a mess. I did. Oh yeah,
shit.
so
Sword.
Nick Fury
You okay, Eric?
has
We broke him too many
Yeah.
theories.
Nick Fury and the Skrulls are squatting in Thanos' old ship.
Hashtag.
Go Gotham.
Okay.
Tweet, let's say, Thanos' sword used to fill man's bones, to coat man's bones. Hashtag worst fork.
That's like that. The amount of euphemisms that are implied there. Just in your fanfic, Thanos' sword fills his bones.
No, Thanos' sword used to coat man's bones. Hashtag worst fork.
Coat my bones.
Sexy as hell.
Coat my
Yeah.
bones.
But I also did a period at Gotham Guardians before that because I wanted them to see it.
Gotcha.
All right. However, okay. Gamora goes home again. Drives new Mustang around a space, and this is a threat as well.
Right side. This is a threat.
Gets attacked by a bunch of enemies of Thanos, and then the Guardians of the Galaxy come save her, and then they get back together again. Hashtag.
And then
And then
Hashtag and then no hashtag you know
Go 2020.
go
Go 2024.
2020 yeah Guardians 2024 whatever the
Great, and-
baseball team is.
Marina, you want to give that to us in the form of a tweet? Just real quick and easy.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Wait,
kidding.
no. What's the name of the spaceship again?
Sanctuary 2.
Gamora drives Sanctuary 2 into the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
whoa,
There
drives
you
it into
go.
the movie.
Hashtag
Hashtag baseball.
then baseball.
Hashtag and then is a good hashtag.
Yes.
And then-
All right. I'm going to give Leo another one on that.
For helping,
And
for
then
helping me.
I'm going to give you a little baby one, Marina, to
Just
plug
making
your
it so I have a
nosebleed
shot
that you
at the
got.
this is just
Why you trying to do
I
that
did. I
right
fought
now.
my way through that very hard.
Okay, let's do a quick
yeah.
recap before we
This
head
is
into our final rogue question, which could decide it and then decide who gets their wishes come true.
Final rogue question.
Eric, you have 3 roguies?
Yes.
Yes.
All right,
3.
Leo, you got
3 rogies.
Oh, and Marina, you got
4.5. I'm out to win.
4.5 roguies.
Are we
All
saying
right.
that's a half a rogie? It looks like it would be.
It literally is 1/8, but
Oh, 4 1/8.
you know, it's a dense material. Anyway, whatever. All right,
Not unlike unobtainium.
right. There you go. All right,
Putting your hand out. You could just get a rogie by
we get a
putting your
rogie
hand out
just
to
fine?
ask.
you'll get something in your hand if you keep doing that. All right,
What's that thing? The bone coat? Yeah.
Bone coat.
You get a bone coat.
you're gonna cut a bone. All right, guys, you ready?
No. We're
This
obviously
could-
not
I'm
ready.
ready.
She did it wrong.
I'm here to win. I'm here to win.
All right, guys, Disney CEO Bob Iger revealed in his new memoir that Steve Jobs called him to tell him how much he hated Iron Man 2.
As did the rest of us.
I love Steve Jobs, put me through to Iger.
Yeah.
I've got whiplash complaints. All right, so pitch me on what Steve Jobs' favorite MCU movie would have been.
He liked Spider-Man. What's the most recent one? Homecoming?
Far From Home?
Far From Home. Sorry. Far From Home. Because it's mostly tech-based, if you think about it. So he's basically all about the tech. He's like, yeah, finally, it's not about being a superhero. It's about being how smart you are and how much you can oppress other people into making your technology for you and then charging lots of money for it. But yeah, that's his favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I think that checks out. That I was going to say that his favorite is probably Age of Ultron for a similar reason in that, like,
Siri
he-
gone crazy.
Yeah, he thinks he's
Yeah.
he thinks he's the smartest person in the world, and so he's like, I built this AI, but I could also stop the AI in the long run. I was able to I can make evil and create
take it
life.
away.
Yeah, I can do both.
That's great.
I think Steve Jobs' favorite MCU film, Watching Down from Heaven, was Avengers Endgame because, like his products, you cannot experience that one without also experiencing everything else that was created by this mega corporation.
You have to have the whole
Oh, boy.
thing.
Yes.
The,
Is that
the
true?
AirPods,
Closed
the
system.
Infinity War. Yeah, it is a closed system.
You think
Oh,
you
so,
need
like-
to have had an iPod to enjoy an
Yours
iPhone?
I don't mean
kinda
previous
meta.
generations. I mean, like, you have to have the
entire
Apple
ecosystem.
headphone
Yeah,
jack,
yeah.
which is not a headphone jack, the lightning
That's a
cable.
little, that's meta. I like that.
Yeah.
That's
All right, this was a weird one. Cool. So for that, I'll assign everybody gets exactly one rogue theory. They all break even exactly. So real quick as we wrap up here, let's
I
find
lost.
out
Just like I
who's
set out to lose.
yeah.
You tied to lose.
All right, so
Because it's a rising
Eric, how many
tide.
do you have?
4.
Leo,
4.
Marina,
5.8 or 5 point whatever.
1/8.
1/8. Okay.
Can we
Yeah,
can we
join
combine
forces?
roguies?
No!
Can we combine roguies and
Can we form a coalition?
both of our wishes come through?
wait, you might be able to. Let me see what yours has.
Our wishes should not
This is
determine the
arbitrary.
rules.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I worked so hard to get through that whole tweet.
No, you cannot combine.
We cannot combine roguies.
Yeah.
That's right.
Marina's wish that gets to come true. I'll tell you about it in 1 second. But again, thanks so much for watching this episode. Make sure to get this as a podcast if you want it first. Also, thank you so much to our guests, Erik Voss, Leo Garcia. We need to see you anywhere. We don't need to see.
Just follow IndieWire. I'm working at IndieWire now.
Great.
We're doing
Yay.
videos and podcasts there. Do that.
Awesome. And Marina, what are you up to?
Videos with Eric all the time. Yay!
Great. And Eric, what do we got coming?
I have no idea. I really have no
I'm in
idea.
a new Rockstar sandwich. Did I say that last time?
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
keep
you
saying
didn't.
it.
You just
Eric's in a brown people sandwich.
Yay! Guys, Marina's wish as we wrap up. I'm Filup Molina, by the way. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Filup Molina. Off-screen producer gets to throw objects at Eric until he compliments each of us sufficiently.
Sufficiently.
Mine's good.
Sufficiently.
So you? Yeah, do
I love that. I don't
it.
get a negative.
I think
Throw the blocks. Throw the roguies.
Leo has a wonderful taste in Jonah Hill films,
Yeah.
including Moneyball, which is an underappreciated
And
Jonah Hill
you
film.
tell him when he's
for
sufficiently
the underhand
complicated.
toss
you.
off screen
You
producer.
tell him when he's sufficiently complicated.
Is that
Complimented.
sufficient?
I think that's. Can I have some more? Is that okay?
It's yours. It's up to
You
you.
gotta
Those
get
are
through
my
all of
rules.
us.
Can I have some?
He has to
Just a
get
little
through
more.
all of
Give me a
us,
little
yeah.
more. Just a little.
Leo's video production.
Stop
work
catching
for IndieWire is unparalleled.
Yes, I'm
And you asked
satisfied.
excellent follow-up questions of Taika Waititi that I almost made into a video.
Wow. My turn.
Marina brings so much laughter and joy to every video she's part of.
More.
I agree.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's good. That's
It's
sufficient.
Philip's
Okay.
turn. It's Philip's turn.
And Filup has a wonderfully fair system of distributing rogie points that, as much as I question it, at the end of the day, it makes the most sense for the show.
That's
Is that
a
acceptable?
sarcastic freaking last one for
It
sure.
wasn't meant sarcastically.
It's okay. We'll keep throwing after the video ends. Thank you guys so much. Just leave. The video's done.
Fade
This is
to
not done.
black.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Yay.
Fade to black.